Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Mai-Coh, yes, this is excellent to see you back here into the Fox Den tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. We have some really epic things to be speaking about, yet please allow me to feed. Absolutely delicious. And now that Mai-Coh has released the shackles and set me free, it is once again time for the Midnight Society to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back once again to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. Mai-Coh has once again stopped in. She has been busy, but is part of the Midnight Society, so it is always great to sit down and try to figure out what the heck is going on with the Dogman phenomenon. How you doing, my friend? What's new?
I am doing well. I am just here and I'm excited to talk about some of the stuff that's going on and some of the potential developments. I hear you've been mentioning possibly a raccoon connection with Dogman stuff, and I think you might be onto something. I've been doing a little bit of research and sort of delving a little bit into some of the, mammal evolution and looking at like Pliocene, Pleistocene critters, that kind of thing. And I think we might be onto something with that. There's definitely some parallels that are very interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that tonight with you.
That is some beautiful stuff. And yeah, I got my mind churning a little while ago, just looking through some of the encounters and just realizing there was a lot of raccoon references that I just wasn't totally paying attention to, meaning hands or appearance wise. And then I started kind of filtering through historical aspects. And I think it was around 40, 50 million years ago. So definitely quite a minute ago when they all broke off between each other, like the
Right.
Amphicenoidae left
Yeah.
in between the bears, the canines, the raccoon. They all kind of broke off into their own separate species. And like the raccoon is actually more closely related to coyotes and foxes, which is
Mm-hmm.
super interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
then indigenous cultures used to call them the wandering bear and the
Yeah.
long-tailed bear. Just really interesting stuff. So, but
Fascinating.
before we do get into that, you
Mm-hmm.
have been working on some projects, and
Yeah.
I would like you to let the audience know what you do outside of working with myself and the
Sure.
North American Dogman Project and where they can find your work.
Sure. Yeah, I have a shop with some of the designs that I've made. I have digital and like traditional artworks that I've made. A lot of cryptid related things. I've sort of combined it all together into a shop, Cryptid Paradise. I will send you the link, Star Fox, and we will and like that way you can share it if you want to. I've got a lot of different things. I've got quite a bit of like Dogman type swag, but I've also got Bigfoot and some other stuff in there. And I'm always working on it. I really enjoy graphic design, artwork, that kind of thing. I just have a lot of fun with it. So I'm always working on that too. So that's something I like to do on the side. Yeah, I'll send you the link for that. Thanks.
Beautiful stuff. And to my audience, Mai-Coh actually helps me a ton with my artwork as well. Yes, I'm an artist too, but her being an artist and a friend saves me a lot of time. And I would say a good chunk of my female Dogman art and some of the werewolf stuff has been created magically by, yes, yours truly, Mai-Coh. So go check her stuff out. Like I said, I will put up
Thanks.
links, and also a lot of the cool images that you see within Tennessee and some of the really deep in the forest shots are hers as well. So again, just check out and support what she's doing. Tonight we are, as previously stated, going to dive into some potential aspects of, well, relatives and what could be occurring. So I am going to toss you the mic, my friend, and
Ah,
let's do this.
all right. I am so excited. Okay. So thanks for that shout out. I do appreciate it. Yeah. And, I'm always happy to see my stuff getting used. I have all these photos from, these, years worth of random adventures in the woods and underground and all this stuff. And I'm happy that you get to use them on your channel. It might as well. That's wonderful. I think, and like I did the little drawing with the comparing the leg bones and stuff like that. That one was bothering me when some stuff was going around about, is this a dogman? Is this a Sasquatch? Is this what is this? So I like to draw a little, let's look at the actual leg bones and see what it looks like, that kind of thing. It's like I like to bring the science aspect. That's stuff that like I have to hand make, hand draw it. And that's also how I am about my like my prehistoric artwork, and some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to also have illustrations that Starfox can throw up here to show what I'm talking about. So first of all, I want to set the stage. We talked about, we're going to talk about the raccoon connection here, but raccoons are not the only thing where there's this same pattern. But there is a pattern of, okay, obviously during the Ice Age, there was a lot of extra large animals all around the world, and particularly we're talking about North America. Okay. Of course, we had vast numbers of elephants, basically like elephant relatives, the mammoths, the mastodons. Um, those, of course, are gone. We actually had horses here. Horses are a North American thing. They evolved here in North America and spread around the world. And then they actually around the beginning of the Holocene, the end of the Ice Age, they actually, as far as we know, went extinct. Though it's possible, I don't know. It's not too long later that that the story is they came over with the Europeans. There are some Native American stories, depending on the tribes, basically saying the horses never left. So I won't say for sure because I wasn't there, right? And I don't have an oral history passed down about that. So that's interesting. So we did have a lot of large animals. We had the American cheetah, and it was actually genetically more related to like a mountain lion, but it was extremely fast and built, convergent evolution. It was built almost exactly like the cheetahs that we have in Africa today. So we had a lot of big animals, and a lot of them are not so prominent. A lot of them are gone, and there are other ones where, okay, a lot of you all in the southern US are familiar with armadillos, right? They are always on the side of the road, little armored, my mother-in-law calls them possum on the half shell. Um, they're just they're everywhere. And they're kind of cute, they're kind of weird, they kind of bumble around. So they had relatives in the Ice Age that were massive, like the size of like a Volkswagen like Beetle, like one of those little cars. Um, those were glyptodonts, and those first popped up around 38 million years ago in the Eocene. The earliest widely recognized fossils from them are from like South America, and like that's where the heyday of them was. Like I think they were also somewhat in North America, but mostly these were a South American creature. And their big giant shells have been found like by farmers in their fields, like in South America. Like somebody's plowing, they're digging their field, and they run up on these big dome shaped things made of all these little pieces, and it's these shells of these glyptodonts. It's fascinating. But that now their faces were kind of sort of pudgier and shorter, but they were basically a giant armadillo, right? And they were huge, and they were herbivores. They just ate plants, and Yeah, they were often buried in groups, like, if they were caught in some sort of disaster and perished together. So they seem to be social, like they traveled in little family groups or herds. We know quite a bit about them. We've found quite a few fossils of them, which is really neat. Sloths are another one with this pattern where there's, we know there are little sloths around today. Some people are obsessed with them. We've got, I think, about 6 species. There's like the two-toed and three-toed sloths, and they just hang around in the trees, and they're super cute, and they're super lazy, and they just munch on leaves. Um, but they are just the sloth family is just a shadow of its former self because there used to be giant ground sloths. They were literally the size of elephants, megatherium. Now they lived through both like North and South America during the Pleistocene. They also, anyway, like they also were around until pretty recently, about 6,000 years ago. There were some Caribbean islands that still had them, and it's could be a coincidence, but it might not be that around the time humans showed up on these islands, they finally went extinct. Um, but yeah, they were amazing, huge creatures, just incredibly massive. They were also herbivores. They also would dig tunnels. There are still to this day, um, people have discovered it's like a cave, but it's not. It's dug in soft, loamy soil in South America. This big, huge tunnel, and it was a sloth burrow, but it's, a human can just walk in it because it's massive, and they just dug this, this hole for themselves. So these creatures were here and now they're not. And it was so recent in some ways that like there are still trees and fruits around that probably evolved to rely on them. Avocados, they have a really huge seed in them, and those are made to pass through the gut of something huge, to properly sprout. But humans thought they were tasty, and so we've cultivated them. They don't really exist in the wild, as far as I understand it. They're basically a ghost of the Ice Age. The creature that thrived on them and that they needed to survive is gone. So now we keep avocados alive. There's other stuff like that. So these megafauna, they're not here, but we still have sloths. We still have the little ones. And so it turns out that the same is true of raccoons. Now they weren't, you know, elephant sized. Interestingly though, they were like bear sized. So huh, these things lived about, now they lived a little bit further in the past as far as we know, than the sloths and the glyptodonts. But yeah, Chapalmalania is the name of this genus, and they're procyonids like the raccoons. These are not ancestors. Glyptodonts are not ancestors to today's armadillos. Like armadillos also existed in the Ice Age. They're like cousins. Just like the giant sloths, they're not ancestors to today's little ones. They have a fairly recent common ancestor, the same type of creature. They're like cousins, right? But they're like, this is a sloth. Here's a big one and a little one. And we only have the little one left, there's an armadillo. We had a big one and a little one, but now we just have the little one left. And here are these raccoons. And we had big ones and little ones, and we only have little ones now. And these big things, I mean, they could have weighed up to about 400 pounds. So like think black bears, which is really fascinating. They're in the fossil record, like, I mean, people sometimes confuse them for a type of bear, but they weren't. And it is really interesting how, raccoons, they are similar to bears in some ways. They have that plantigrade gait, like they walk flat-footed kind of. The way they move. The main difference physically, other than size, is that they have a long tail. Of course, there's other differences too, but that's like the main obvious visual difference to an observing human. Um, Now we have other relatives that are just as closely related. So North America, we basically just have raccoons. But we also have okay, ringtails, those are in North America, but think like some people call them ringtail cats. They're not cats. They're related to the raccoons. They're like in Texas and stuff like that, all the way down through like Mexico, South America. There's also coatis, coatimundis. Most of these are omnivores, with the exception of kinkajous. Those eat just fruit. They're frugivorous, and they actually have cool. Their tails are prehensile, so they can do cool things like holding onto branches with their tails and stuff, which is really neat. But they seem to be like sort of a weird offshoot. The main but this mean the giant raccoons of the past, the Chapalmalanian, those were more like built like today's raccoons in that they, you know, well, they're built like a bear too, honestly. Um, they didn't have like a long wild tail or anything. They were just kind of, they were just kind of this burly thing. There was the great, they call it the Great American Interchange, when when the Isthmus of Panama rose from the sea and basically North and South America connected. This was actually fairly disastrous to a lot of really interesting um, marsupials in South America. We had the giant, we had like saber-tooth marsupials. We had all sorts of interesting creatures down there. And now we pretty much just have possums. Now there are more species of possums in South America. But anyway, so it's possible the extinction of these creatures happened around that time when there was a lot of chaos and things were happening, because they went extinct before the end of the ice age, so we can't say that it was like, oh, humans did that one. um it could have been like some bears, some newer, like, lineages of bears that basically outdid it and they did better at the niches that they were trying to use. And yeah, and there was some climate change too. So, oh, and anyway, terror birds, the large gigantic birds that were around at the time, they also could have caused some stress. Anyway, there were a lot of different things that could have led to their extinction. But what if they didn't go extinct, right? That's what we're saying here. Or what if some form of them survived? We just haven't found fossils of them, from any more recently than that. They actually were considered more carnivorous than other procyonids. So that's interesting. They're classified as hypocarnivores. Um, so let's see here. They probably were somewhat omnivorous, like most raccoons are, which helps because that way they can eat berries, they can eat other stuff, but they probably ate quite a bit of meat. Um, anyway, so they've actually found bite marks on the carcasses of Glyptodonts, the giant armadillo things, which suggests that they were fed on by these giant raccoons. So we don't know if they unalived those creatures or if they were just scavenging. But it's like it matches up. It doesn't match to a cat. It doesn't match to a dog. It doesn't match to a bear. It matches to these giant raccoons on these particular fossils, which is very interesting. We don't know as much about them though as we do about, saber-toothed cats like Smilodon, or, dire wolves or whatever. They are not well studied. They're not exactly as well known. It's actually very hard to even find, like, if you look them up online, like there's not even that much paleo art of them. Not many people have depicted them. There's a few, but just a few. They are pretty obscure. And I just think that there are lots of good possibilities. There are so many reasons that it's possible there's a Dogman connection here. And I'm going to go through some reasons there could be a connection, and then I'm going to maybe suggest some reasons against it, because I wouldn't be a good science enthusiast without giving the opposite view here too. Okay, so the hands thing is huge, right? Um not everyone, but so many encounters going back so long talking about Dogman, they talk about the hands. They say it didn't have paws. It had like raccoon hands, like raccoon hands, blah, 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 over and over and over and over, raccoon hands. And while it's possible that some actual canid could have evolved an upright stance and could have evolved hand-like paws, it also seems it seems a lot more likely that it could have been something, to me anyway, that already has a little hand-like paws, right? We're not starting from scratch here, because I mean, you're right, Star Fox, talking about when these things broke off from, like, bear, like when these creatures, the raccoon ancestors broke off from, the bears, the cats, and the dogs, and all of that. That was a long time ago. And their little hands have been kind of probably evolving ever since. And that's not something that overnight is going to change on its own, evolutionarily. All these things take time. So that is a huge one, of course, the hands. There are a few other things that are less obvious, though, that I think are worth considering. And some of these things are going to be like, obvious. Some of those might be kind of random, but like, okay, raccoons are super curious. And we have so many stories of like dogmen trying to open windows and trying to like fiddle with things and mess with things. Of course, any super intelligent animal is going to be probably pretty curious, right? But raccoons are smart. Like, I'm not sure if anyone's run IQ tests on them, but I'm pretty sure they're smarter than, the average like canine of the same size. I don't know about a domestic dog, but I don't know. Raccoons are super smart, and maybe they have an easier time showing it because they're so dexterous that it could be that as well. Um, Raccoons do have quite an affinity for water. They have no problem swimming. Sometimes they like to wash their food even. And there's of course a lot of there have been quite a few sightings of dogmen in and around bodies of water, even swimming, that kind of thing. Like, again, like no stranger to water here. Very, very comfortable in an aquatic setting. And here's one more thing that this is almost like just from my own observations. In caves, when I'm underground, and if you heard my other episode, I spend a lot of time underground as my hobby. I do a lot of cave stuff. I've done caving stuff for science, for conservation, for that kind of thing, and just for fun. Um, if I'm going to see tracks of an animal underground and they're fresh, it's almost always raccoon. I have found raccoon tracks way back in caves, and that's just like not even special. Like, we see them all the time. um, Now, I'm not talking about as far back as you might see like really ancient Pleistocene stuff that hasn't changed, since the Ice Age. There are those tracks too, and that's really cool. But like in the active stream caves where it's, there's water flowing and there's animal activity near the entrance, but even going way back up the stream, raccoon prints all the time. Have I actually ever seen a raccoon in a cave? I actually haven't. I haven't. Now, I haven't been to every cave in the world. I haven't been to thousands of caves, but I've seen the tracks a lot in the little stream banks and the sandy spots, like everywhere. And I've often seen, the remains of like crayfish. They go in there to catch crawdads, and they just, they're going in there to eat things. And if there's not really anything for them to eat, they don't seem to go too far in there. Though I'm thinking of a dry cave. Actually, there was a stream in it. Anyway, there was one cave we went into, and it was the longest freaking annoying hassle of a crawl ever. You couldn't actually like crawl on your hands and knees. Now, crawling on your hands and knees is not as nice as walking, but it's a lot nicer than like having to like semi belly crawl. And this cave was so annoying because you it was just high enough that it seemed like you should almost be able to crawl on your hands and knees, but you never quite could. A kid could. We didn't have any kids with us at the time. So we kind of basically had to like belly crawl in this whole stupid entrance. And it was anyway, we missed the turnoff to see the formations. It was so annoying. There wasn't much to see, but there were so many raccoon tracks all along here. And it was used there are caves that are used as the nice way that the cavers put it is a latrine. They use it as a bathroom. They go in there a lot and they poop, and it's gross. And knowing what I know now about like some of the stuff that can be in raccoon poop, that is nasty. I almost would rather deal with bat guano. I don't like that either though. Anyway, there was so much raccoon poop. So raccoons really like caves. And I know there's a lot of speculation about possible, dogman use of caves and underground stuff and water sources, that sort of thing. And I don't see I don't I see cat traces from like Ice Age stuff a lot more often than I see dog related stuff, like actual dog, wolves, foxes, that sort of thing. The only examples I can think of off the top of my head with a lot of like dog traces would be like canids, I mean, not like pet dogs. Would be like pit caves where, foxes or stuff would fall in and perish. I'm thinking about Natural Trap Cave out in Wyoming. There's examples of dire wolves and coyotes and regular wolves and American cheetahs and American lions and everything you could think of from that time period. It was just this hole in the ground, and things would fall in sometimes and they would not come out. So it's a great, very thorough catalog of fossils there. But typically you don't see the dogs going super like the canids going super far in. Though I have friends who have rescued more than one hunting dog from like, from a cave. Actually, they're always really happy to do that. If someone's like, this dog is like, I lost him in a cave, or she's in a cave and she's scared to come out. And anyway, it seems like, once or twice a year, my friends in Middle Tennessee they'll end up, saving somebody's dog from a cave. They're always super happy to do that. So sometimes dogs do end up in there, and very, very occasionally, sadly, we've, found dog bones. Like a friend found a collar from a dog that had gone missing, decades before. They tried to actually track down the owner, but anyway, it was somebody's hunting dog, and it had, I guess, fallen in a pit and had been lost. It's really sad. Sorry. Anyway, so other than like hunting dogs out in the woods and chasing stuff, dogs don't typically go in caves very much, but raccoons do all the time, all the time. So to me, that is worth noting, just a behavioral thing. Although something that is as, related as distantly, they're, the same family. The giant raccoons versus like our North American raccoons today, you know, they're within the same family, so they could have similar behavior. But then if you compare them to like the kinkajou that eats fruits and has a prehensile tail and is also in the same family, that's not very similar at all. So it is quite a bit of guesswork. We don't know. Okay, a couple things against why, it's not a perfect fit. And this again, they're in the same family, these raccoon family things, but they're not the same species. But still, raccoons chitter a lot. The vocalizations, they're pretty cute. They make a lot of different vocalizations, whereas Dogman, they're not really known for sounds like that. They're not like compared to, and I'm thinking of like, I've seen coatis in the wild. I've seen, like they just, the raccoon family tends to be like make nice little sounds, but dogmen, they don't. They're known for like these really eerie howls, and they're known for growling, and some, of course, their howls can almost sound like a scream, it sounds like, too. So they are their vocalizations don't really sound similar, it sounds like. Of course, for something that much bigger, who knows how different it sounds, right? So there is that was the main one for me, is their vocalizations just don't really fit at all. And the bipedal thing, I mean, I don't know. Raccoons will easily, happily stand up. Oh, and dogmen are known to climb too, right? And raccoons happily climb trees all the time. So that's another thing. It's not uncommon to have raccoons on or in your roof. And I've never heard of a dogman being in somebody's attic, but I've heard of them being on roofs a lot. A lot of encounters like that, or climbing a tree to look in a window. And raccoons love that kind of thing. There's, my grandma and grandpa had a couple of skylights, and occasionally they had little faces peeking in, and it was just raccoons, not dogmen. But sometimes they would just peek in and look at them and see what are these humans doing, because they were up there. So that's another thing, any curious animal, if they can access stuff, it might just want to check stuff out. Of course, aggression wise, raccoons are not as aggressive as, dogmen seem to be. Like they are, unless you're not going to usually have one trying to attack you typically, or, scare you away from an area. They're just going to run and hide. But then again, there's a huge size difference. Who knows what a raccoon the size of a bear would do? Especially if it was, massive and fast and hyper carnivorous. So that's kind of my theory about how, like, there could be a connection there. If something was smart enough to survive, if something was somehow able to make it through, maybe there's some connection there, because there are so many ways they're similar. And when you're looking at like a raccoon face, if you remove the markings that make them so distinctive, they have what? They have like a muzzle. They have, yeah, their ears are kind of rounded. They're not really pointed. So that's a difference. But if someone finds bones in a cave, I'm pretty good at identifying what they are. Like, somebody will be like, "Hey, I found this. What is this? Do you think this is somebody's dog?" And usually it's like, "No, that's actually a raccoon," or "That's a possum," or "That's, that's a rabbit." Usually people can tell if it's a rabbit or something like that because of the teeth. But like, their bones are fairly similar. Oh, this is funny. This is really funny. um, a lot of people who like to get wolf skull tattoos, the skull that people often will use in these tattoos is actually a raccoon skull. Because wolf skulls look kind of like really long and kind of narrow and kind of weird. If you're curious about this, if you don't believe me, like Google like wolf skull, raccoon skull tattoo, and you can find this thread of it where it just kind of blows it wide open. It's to the point where possibly most tattoos of wolf skulls are actually raccoon, because their skull looks like structurally it looks very canine. It actually does. It looks more like a wolf skull than an actual wolf skull does in some ways, um, which, hey, a raccoon skull, I mean, that's pretty hardcore. If I were to get a tattoo of an animal skull, which I probably wouldn't, but if I did, that one would not be a bad one to have. It looks really cool. But they do look very canine. And so, you know, make it black. How would that look? Make it bipedal. How would that look? Make it the size of a bear and standing on two legs. What would that look like? That would look a heck of a lot like a Dogman. It really would. So that's just one thing to think about. I don't know. What do you think, Star Fox?
That was all beautiful stuff right there. And my mind just exploded with trying to file everything properly in my brain because I have like a photogenic mind and I try to describe it as like a filing cabinet. And now that I'm able to think more clearly in life, I'm able to, put things in proper files. So that was absolutely great right there. And first, I just wanted to say, when it comes to being an artist, before I do let you get going, you're actually a true artist. To my audience, yes, I can draw. Okay. I have no problem doing it. I have drawn some of my stuff, but I'm also not going to front. Okay. I have to record my own vocals. I have to edit those with my hosts and guests. I have
We're
to
busy.
do all kinds of other things. Okay. So to save time, yeah, call me a weenie or whatever you want to say. Yeah, I do use AI sometimes because an AI image to edit it and all that stuff, it takes me maybe sometimes at the most half hour, give or take.
Mhm.
Whereas if I have to draw something from scratch, it's really time consuming. So like I said, she is actually the real artist here, which is great. And I wanted to make a reference real quick too, which you'd find interesting, is recently they found a group of T-Rex in a pack, which then has kind of
That's
blown the
cool.
door open as to them being like pack oriented because there's a
Social
bunch of them
animals.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
straight up crazy. And then raccoons, yes, like you said, raccoons can open doors. They do have like a reset button in their brain, which is so funny. After certain, I believe it's like 3 or 4 months, they forget stuff and
Uh,
learn again. So you'd have to teach them again. Yeah, it's like a cleared out button, like a
so raccoons have
cache.
ADHD.
Yes,
So
but
that's cool.
also, I
I
mean,
say
I've
that
sent
because I
it
have
to you. Yeah,
that.
I've sent it to you before with my squirrel, and I've told my
Yep.
audience if the door is
Yep.
open, she can get out. But if the
That's so
door is
funny.
closed properly, she can't get in. But what she do? She hangs on the door
She's
and
still gonna
literally
try.
looks in. Yes, and is like, dude, let me in. So, like you said, the aspect of looking in and wanting to like see things is super interesting. And also
Yes.
another thing that you had referred to with the hands, yeah, raccoons will drown things. They've been caught drowning animals
Oh,
that they're going to
yes.
consume,
Yes.
dogs that are trying to hunt
That's
them.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
which
They
brings
can
that
be
to
fierce.
a
They
whole
can
nother
be.
level, which is crazy. And then back to what you were saying about the raccoons just basically being like little scumbags and just urinating and pooping everywhere. It's a lot of people don't know squirrels, for example, super clean. So they
Yeah.
don't go to the bathroom in their nest. Like I have a little
Nice.
basically like a cat box underneath my squirrel's little setup. And she hangs
Aw.
off of it and pees and poops into the cat
That is
bucket.
so
And
handy.
she
That's
like,
so
yeah,
neat.
she literally pushes the nuts out of there on the floor and stuff. She's like, dude, get this out of here. I want my stuff clean. So it's just funny, like you said, you have these raccoons that are smart too, that are literally just like, here, I'm just gonna take a poop in my own living room,
Oh,
basically.
gross. Latrine, exactly. Ooh. Oh my word. And there's interesting stories too of dogmen like peeing on stuff, like maybe on purpose. I mean, I've heard that on your channel. Really cool, interesting stuff. Anyway,
Yeah, the
Interesting
neighborhood
stuff.
cat that's a stray. He's a punk. He comes over and pees on the dang door and it smells so bad. So, yes, definitely. And then
Yep.
also with the strange screams, like you were saying, whereas like
Mm-hmm.
raccoons and such make a little bit more generic type sounds. Well,
Mm-hmm.
hyenas and baboons scream, and they
Yeah.
would fall a little bit more into my eyes of probably some of the Dogman type like vocalizations.
Yes. Yes.
And on a
It makes
final
sense.
note, with things like you're saying, size oriented, well, for the most part, yeah, usually when things are smaller, they'll run. The only thing I've ever noticed that has no fear of running is like picture. I mean, I don't like to dispose of anything. So if I can even let
Right.
spiders out, I try to. But
Yep.
picture a
Same.
jumping spider that is the size of your fingernail. That dude or that girl has no problem with veering up and running at you. It's like, yo, dude, this thing is literally a micro organism compared to me and has no
Right.
fear. Now imagine if that thing was the size of your cat. That'd be
Oh my word.
terrifying.
That would be horrifying. Exactly. That level of just absolute like fearlessness. The audacity.
Yeah, they have no fear. Like literally, like the spiders run at you. Like even when you're trying to let them in the kitchen, you're like, "What the heck, man?" Like no wonder a lot of people have arachnophobia because picture, like I
Right.
said, a spider the size of a top of a trash can running at you like that, which it
No.
would.
No. People would break out the pew pew to deal with them. I mean, they would be terrifying.
From like the thing with the flamethrower, right?
Yeah, right. Oh no. Or it's the spider's house now.
No, straight up. That just
Oh
reminds
no.
me of like arachnophobia. That movie terrified me, traumatized
Oh
me when I was
no.
a child. I don't have a problem. I mean, I'm not scared of
No.
spiders, but that,
Nah.
I mean, just the thought of that, because I have an imagination.
Oh
So when
yeah.
you're like 11 teen and you're seeing that, and if
Right.
people are at school tell you that watermelons grow in your stomach if you swallow seeds,
And you
stuff
just
like that.
believe.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then you're watching this movie where spider webs are popping out of the woman and guy's ears and mouth, and you're like, what the crap,
Gross.
dude? That's so
Oh
funny.
man.
But well, thanks again for popping in and
Appreciate it.
hanging out with me tonight and
Well, thanks for
basically
having me.
really teaching a ton of information that I had not heard of before. And that is why you are a part of our science team because
Well,
you are able to come in with a heat and just bring in both sides of why it could be or couldn't be. So again, thank you for coming in and hanging out on Midnight Lycanthropy, and I look forward
yeah.
to definitely collaborating again here soon.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm, and I will catch you on the next one.